This is your reality check.
Hi everyone, and welcome to The Reality Check, the Canadian show that explores a wide range of controversies and curiosities using science and critical thinking. I'm your host, Darren McKee, and with me, as usual, is Adam Gardner.
Oh, hey, what's up, Cuboids?
We have a great show for you today. Adam's going to talk to us about the Mona Lisa.
That's right.
What's she really hiding? But first, I'm going to talk to you about effective giving. Longtime listeners will know that I'm a huge proponent of effective giving, but I haven't covered the topic in several years, not since around the pandemic, actually. And Giving Tuesday is December 2nd, which is just around the corner. It could be the corner you just went past, or the corner that's coming up by the time you hear this. So it's time for a quick refresher. Okay, to be very concise, this is the idea. Number 1, suffering is bad.
Yes.
Number 2, many people are suffering in this world. Number 3, with your help, that suffering could be reduced. And number 4, reducing more suffering is better than reducing less suffering. Thus, it makes sense to give effectively. Today's refresher assumes you have some belief that preventing people from dying and suffering is the right thing to do. And if not, well, perhaps in a future show, I'll revisit the argument in more detail about why I think that's clearly true. So we'll just go through this a little bit, just in case some people are unconvinced. Are there really that many people suffering? Yes, unfortunately, an unimaginable amount. Worldwide, more than one person dies every second. Now, most of this is cardiovascular disease, and then you have other health issues like cancer. That's a large part of what kills people. Homicide and war are dreadful, horrible things. And they're definitely what makes the headlines, but it's often a lot less than what happens due to disease. Can you actually help reduce suffering? Yes, you can. Some of it anyway. Not all of it, but some, and that's what matters. I've always said that donating to a charity is a personal choice, and I still stand by that. It's very tempting and fully understandable to be swayed by what feels good emotionally. But what about instead of that, or at least in addition to that, we used evidence and reason to guide our actions? Oh, I know, if you're listening to the show. Something that helped me question which causes I think are the most effective was to think about what matters at the root. Like, what's really going on here? Is it really breast cancer that I care about, or the suffering caused by breast cancer? Is it blindness that I care about, or the suffering caused by blindness? And that's the real thing. In this way, suffering is the focus, not specifically what causes that suffering. Of course, that said, some problems are easier to address than others, meaning it's easier to reduce some suffering for some causes more than for others. Therefore, the implication, some charities are far more effective at reducing suffering, literally doing more good for every dollar you donate. For example, malaria kills around 600,000 people a year. Most are children under the age of 5. It definitely affects mothers and children, men, entire communities. The Against Malaria Foundation provides anti-malarial bed nets to reduce the risk of infection. Recipients of nets hang and sleep under them so they are not bitten by malaria-carrying mosquitoes. It's a charity I've supported every year for over 12 years. Highly recommended. If you're looking for other options in the space of global public health, there are things like the Helen Keller International Charity that provides vitamin A for children. Despite being easily preventable, vitamin A deficiency is a major contributor to childhood mortality in the developing world. There's also other charities that helps vaccinations, which is definitely a useful thing in this world to reduce suffering. Now, these recommendations come from the highly regarded charity evaluator GiveWell. You can go to givewell.org to see all their recommendations.
Great website.
You'll find the link in our show notes, trcpodcast.com.
Another great website.
2 in a row. I've talked about GiveWell in the past, not for this episode, but maybe in the future. It's just a great website that tries to think what's the most effective way to do some good. In this brief segment, I've mainly focused on a couple health-related charities, but there are many different options depending on what you think is most effective. As I wanted to make this segment brief, I just want to close with a quick little effective giving checklist. So number 1, clarify your goal. What are you actually trying to achieve here? Are you trying to save some lives, reduce suffering, improve long-term outcomes? Are you really focused on reducing suffering in general, or is there something specific you want to focus on? Number 2, research charities. You can check evaluators like GiveWell, or sites like Giving What We Can, or do a broader-based research, just trying to think about what matters here in terms of effectiveness. You're looking for clarity, transparency, measurable impact, and even just the general rationality of the people organizing and running these sorts of things. Number 3, compare cost effectiveness. The easiest way to do this is something like how much impact per dollar. Now, certain charities are more amenable to that type of calculus than others. That can be part of your overall decision matrix. For example, malaria bed nets versus other different types of interventions. Number 4, balance emotion with reason. You can ask yourself, am I giving because it feels good or because it does the most good? And if you're not quite sure how to feel about all this, you could actually consider splitting them. You have a local cause or something far more important to you that you're not as overtly concerned about impact per dollar. And then maybe some of that allocation that you would give goes to high impact global charities.
Yeah, good idea.
Also, it's useful, this is the final one, commit to a habit. So decide on a percentage of income. Maybe it's 1%, maybe it's 5%, maybe it's 10%, maybe it's more. And then automate donations. And then you can review these decisions annually. The goal, unless you really want to think of it all the time, is to kind of set it and forget it. Assuming you think giving is a good idea, and you've done the research, and you want to give a certain percentage of income, just set it up so you don't have to think about it all the time. Unless you want the reminder of the good you're doing all the time.
Some great advice, Darren.
Thanks, Adam. I'm sure you've never heard it before.
Once or twice.
Once or twice. Obviously, people can do what they want, but I think there's a lot of ways to do a lot of good, and a lot of us have a lot we can give.
Absolutely.
Now, one of the biggest hurdles in effective giving is that the most impactful causes, like malaria nets or deworming, aren't very glamorous. They don't usually grab headlines. However, our next topic is the definition of a headline grabber. It's the most visited, written about, and parodied work of art in the world. Adam, the Mona Lisa. Tell us what's going on.
Mona Lisa is a world-famous painting by artist Leonardo da Vinci. There's a lot of real and false information surrounding this piece, so I'll talk about it a bit today. Back in August of 2019, on episode 558 of the show, I talked a bit about the Mona Lisa. At the time, I'd seen an exhibit at the Museum of Science and Technology here in Ottawa, which examined the now famous painting to show what the original colors would have looked like. So basically, the version we see with a sort of yellow tint and a green sky is the result of some varnish which coated the painting that's gotten a yellow hue to it throughout time. The original painting, as these researchers determined, was actually brighter with a bright blue sky. Now, I won't repeat that whole segment, but they did a few things to determine this. There was a lot of scientific techniques they did, and they replicated the varnish and aged it to see the similar aging so that they could kind of backwards try to realize what those colors were. So I found that compelling. I did a segment on it. You can go back and listen to that if you want. There might be repetition for what I'm about to talk about. Because basically a couple of Mona Lisa themed facts came up to me on social media. I thought this was worth investigating. And while investigating, I found some contradictory stuff. So I wanted to kind of dive in and explore that. In both cases, these were Instagram videos I saw by user ISTOKP. I don't follow this guy. I don't know much about him, but the algorithm accurately determined this was something I wanted to see. They do that sometimes. So the first video is a bit straightforward. It's actually the second one I saw, but for the narrative of the segment, it works a little better if I pretend it's the first one. The claim went that basically they found an old replica of the Mona Lisa, which had the original colors, and wow, the sky was blue. So this was funny to me because it seemed like it was a sort of independent confirmation of this thing that these researchers that I'd learned about at the museum had taken all this painstaking time to look up. But I still sort of found the story a bit simple. How long had this replica been around that no one noticed that it was blue all along? What was going on? Were there a bunch of replicas and wouldn't they all kind of have the original colors if they were old enough? If they were yellow, then something else would be weird. So now I was deep diving into Mona Lisa replicas and things like this. And as the story goes, he said this was a recently discovered replica of the Mona Lisa. It was made by a student of Leonardo's and perfectly preserved for 500 years. So that sounded a bit fishy.
That sentence. It sounds like something you'd read in the trailer to a movie.
How'd you lose a painting for 500 years but preserve it?
Perfectly preserved for 500 years.
Was it in a cave? Was it in someone's wall? What's going on? But when I looked it up, there were a number of surviving Mona Lisa replicas from the 16th and 17th century, and this one in particular, the Prado Mona Lisa, had been in the Museo del Prado in Madrid, Spain, since 1819. So not really recently discovered. Not really.
Not recent.
So that said, this is recent compared to the 1503 to 1516, which is the range in which we're assuming that the Mona Lisa was originally painted. But what's important about this particular piece is that after a restoration in 2011-2012, one could argue that is recent, it was determined to be an earlier known studio copy of the Mona Lisa. This means that it would have been painted by a student of Leonardo da Vinci's at the same time. The artist is not known, but it could be Salai or Francesco Messi. So, for years, this particular version wasn't very notable. One key difference from the original Mona Lisa was that there was no landscape in the background. It was basically the woman, the Mona Lisa, or Lisa del Giocondo, and a black background. A restoration was conducted from 2011 to 2012, as I mentioned. That revealed that the black paint had been applied over 200 years after the painting was originally done.
Sneaky.
And guess what they found when they used infrared reflectology and radiography to peer under the black paint?
A green screen? Oh, no?
No, they found the volume. They used the volume to paint it. So basically, behind the black paint, the background included a blue sky, not the sort of greenish one that we're used to seeing. The black paint was eventually removed, and the background with the original colors was similar to the real Mona Lisa, only more blue. More specifically, on infrared reflectography, this uses infrared light to peer through the varnish and paint to see a specific type of carbon black, which is used for sketches. So I remember using that kind of carbon back in art class to draw sort of just black and white stuff. So I guess it's been around quite a while, longer than since my art class in the 90s.
I think carbon's actually been around for a couple billion years.
Pretty long. There's a lot of it. Some in me, there's some in you, there's some in all of us.
It's just real organic stuff, you know?
Yeah. So radiography is when radio waves, usually X-rays, are used to examine details like the pigments of a specific object. So this might reveal things like the lapis lazuli used to produce the bright blue in the sky, which isn't really visible in the one in the Louvre. So how do they know it was painted at the same time? Through the deep analysis of the painting, using that infrared reflectography and radiography, they found artifacts in this and Da Vinci's Mona Lisa, which showed similarities in the preparatory underdrawings, right? So if the drawing under the Mona Lisa is similar, and it's not just a copy of the painting that was sort of the surface layer, right? They didn't have infrared reflectography to do replicas back in the 16th century.
No, they did not.
I think it's fair to say. So the little blow your mind Instagram video got a lot of the details wrong, and this recently discovered replica was not really recent. But arguably the discovery that was an older replica was actually a recent discovery, okay? But it is true that it does give us powerful insights into these colors. Strangely, the analysis that was done related to what was in the Museum of Science and Technology in Ottawa that I saw years ago was after the discovery of the colors in the replica. So those are basically two strong pieces of evidence supporting the same idea that those were the Mona Lisa's original colors. I don't think that's very debatable, to me at least. The Mona Lisa that we see today is not what it looked like back in the day when it was originally painted. So there are lots of links in the show notes that you can look at, or you can easily search for yourself to see sort of what the original colors of the Mona Lisa looked like if you're curious. So that'll probably be the image for the show notes. I think it would work well.
That makes sense.
So importantly, the Prado Mona Lisa differs quite a bit from the Leonardo da Vinci original. So if you look at them, there's just minor differences in the detail, like the shape of her face and her cheeks is a bit different. There's detail in the eyes that differs. And there's an odd detail, but one that's easy to spot when you're comparing the two. But Leonardo da Vinci's version has obvious cleavage and the Prado version does not. So you can tell which one's what.
I thought we were going to talk about her eyebrows.
No, but that's a thing too. This is like, you don't really see her eyebrows, but that is because it's aged, most likely, that they're less visible. Also, the Prado version has a 666 in it, and someone said that it's like it was there for cataloging, and it's not there intentionally. And then there are conspiracy theorists that don't believe that story.
Of course,
so I'm not going to dive deep into that particular thing.
For those curious, we did cover the number of the beast, the origins of this, on episode 666 of all things.
Robert Heinlein says it's 6 to the power of 6 to the power of 6, which is like the number of dimensions, in one of his less fantastic novels.
I think that's also not true. Well, second myth busted.
It's true that Heinlein said that. It's not true that those are the number of dimensions.
I'm not sure if that's true either. That's a third myth, Adam.
So let's say you want to say a print of the original colored Mona Lisa. You get a print of the Prado version, which isn't the original Mona Lisa painted by Da Vinci. But if you get a color-corrected version of Da Vinci's Mona Lisa, this would actually look a bit different. I don't know how easily available these are. I think there were like fridge magnets and stuff like that at the exhibit that I originally saw. But then we can kind of have a debate about like what's more authentic, right? A color corrected one that's actually less like the version which exists now, and it's maybe a simulation of what the old one looks like. So, that's sort of a philosophical question about it.
And I like philosophical questions. What is the Mona Lisa as she is now, as she was in the past, or not? Yeah. And I could see a truth claim being to either one.
Yeah, absolutely. Darren's pulling up a picture of it right now. I think it looks quite nice. Obviously, it's not what we're used to, so it's a bit jarring, but I think it's quite beautiful.
I think that's a good way to say it. It is pleasant, and it seems, in a way, more pleasant, but it's not soft. It's not what we're used to.
Yeah.
It's almost like one is in sepia, and the other one is not.
Yeah, I think on the last episode I mentioned it was like the colors of an original Game Boy screen. It's all these like shades of yellow,
Mm-hmm.
So the question in my mind then became, what do other replicas of the Mona Lisa look like? If the varnish was applied later and that the yellow tint, the result of aging, appeared gradually over time, wouldn't we expect other replicas to have a variety of colors? We don't have 500-year-old photographs of the Mona Lisa, but shouldn't we have 500-year-old paintings of it? So the Mona Lisa was painted between 1503 and 1506. And one replica is the Gioconda di Monte Citorio. It is said to date from the 16th century, which would be pretty early. Some argue that Leonardo da Vinci himself painted this one, while others dispute this. It's also argued that it was potentially done by a student of his, as was the case for the Prado Mona Lisa. Fun fact, there's no English Wikipedia page for this replica. There was an Italian version. Lucky for me, there was a French version, so I was able to read about it. Anyway, this version does not have a blue sky and has a yellow tint to it that we're used to seeing. I couldn't find specifics on why, but I'll offer a few possibilities. They're kind of my own idea. These aren't super scientific. Perhaps it isn't as old as people think, and that it was painted based on the aged varnished version of the yellowed Mona Lisa as a reference. Maybe it is that old, but due to whatever factors, it's similarly aged, maybe at a different rate, but yellowed just differently. I was kind of hoping for other replicas to kind of like have a bit more blue, and people just kind of like didn't really mention it or didn't really notice, but that wasn't really the case. Another one is the Isleworth Mona Lisa, a variant where the subject is younger. Some argue that it was painted by Leonardo da Vinci earlier, but this is disputed. Most historians seem to agree that it is early 16th century, painted during da Vinci's lifetime. The sky is not blue, but again, kind of yellow. In this case, the painting differs enough that the color is just one of the differences. There's also the Hermitage Mona Lisa dating from mid-16th century, so after the original by only about a half century. The sky is bluish-green and the painting is still a bit yellow. So in all of these cases, I suppose another possible reason for the less blue sky could just be the relative scarcity and the cost of the ultramarine paint made by grinding up lapis lazuli, a semi-precious blue stone. Funny side story, my daughter did like some arts and craft at school, and she came home with this like pile of sand that was like tinted blue because they put like probably like paint or something in it. And it was like, we just threw it in the garbage. And I was like, this was so valuable. Like 500 years ago, this color blue was so hard to do. And it's just like, they just have it in the arts and crafts at daycare. Like it just doesn't matter, you know? So more recent replicas and photos of the Mona Lisa, of course, have the yellowish green sky's color because the painting has aged. So why don't that many replicas exist between the 16th century and modern day? Well, it looked like that in 1911, which is why we think that's what it looks like today. But why would that be important? Well, this is where the claim from the second viral video I saw came in. The Mona Lisa was a relatively unimportant painting until it was stolen in 1911 and the media made it famous.
Dun, dun, dun.
So this seems to be somewhat true, if not a bit exaggerated. So I think it's probably not true that the Mona Lisa was unknown or unimportant before 1911. It certainly was not as well known as it is today. Indeed, the painting was stolen from the Louvre in 1911. The viral Instagram video claims that no one even noticed it was gone because it was so unimportant. Now, this isn't really true. Yes, the painting was gone for more than a day before it was recognized as stolen, but this was because paintings were often removed for cleaning or photography, so people probably just thought there was a good reason for it not being there. When a visiting artist asked where the painting was, they quickly discovered it was stolen, and indeed what followed was a lot of press about the Mona Lisa being stolen, which in turn hyped it up as more important than it had been previous. The painting remained missing for years until the thief Vincenzo Perugia, a former Louvre employee, tried to sell it. The prospective buyer essentially ratted him out, and the painting was returned to the Louvre in 1914. And indeed, this came with a renewed interest in the painting, discourse about her smile, all sorts of things like that. The mysterious look. But the video in question refers to the Mona Lisa as a basic Renaissance selfie, stating that a rich merchant asked Leonardo da Vinci to paint his wife, and this was a side hustle to grab some cash.
You basic. You hear that, Mona? I mean, Lisa?
Yeah. So this seems to be underplaying what it meant even to Da Vinci. Surely it may not have been his greatest work or the most important work to him, but he worked on it for many years. As we saw, he had at least one student or apprentice paint it along with him. There was a lot of working care going into it, even if it wasn't the be-all, end-all of his artistic career. The Prado Mona Lisa was on display in Madrid for almost 100 years before Da Vinci's version was stolen from the Louvre. Hardly an insignificant piece. All this to say, perhaps the reason we didn't even notice that Mona Lisa's sky wasn't blue is is that back before it was yellowed, there weren't that many replicas of it because it wasn't that big a deal as it was now, right? So yes, there were some from back in the day, but like I don't see a lot of like 18th century, 19th century replicas of the Mona Lisa. So it may be true that it was not as big a deal as it is now in the past.
You know, it might just be harder in general for anything to have been as big a deal, given that there was less social media, less newspapers, photography, literacy. Like, you know, just these certain things did not exist. And you may hear of some wonder of the world, but maybe that wasn't as much a particular object like a work of art versus a jewel or, you know, a monument or some sort of natural architectural geographical situation.
Yeah, until you really have like photography and color photography, even a work of art, unless you see it in person, is not something that you're gonna even hear about that much, right?
And travel was harder, right?
Yeah.
So yes, maybe someone tells you somewhere that somebody saw something somewhere.
Mm-hmm. The Mona Lisa is a lovely painting, whether seen with a bright blue sky, under a layer of aged and tinted varnish, or even as one of the many replicas. It wasn't always the famous painting that it is today, but it was always a somewhat special piece, painted with care and attention by one of history's most beloved artists. At least one person thought it was worth stealing, even back in 1911.
Have you seen it, Adam, in person?
No, and I brought this up on the last time on the show. I was the only one on the panel that hadn't seen it, and now it's starting to bug me because I've never been to Paris. Where I have been to Florence, where it was painted, but where it isn't. And I saw Michelangelo's David in Florence, and I kind of like, it would have been cool if the Mona Lisa was still there, but
that's funny.
Whatever. Things move around. And this was actually the guy who stole it. This was one of his things. He was like, it should go back to Italy.
Of course.
Because he was like butthurt about it. Mm-hmm. Whether that was, he did try to sell it for money. So I don't think he was really being totally, totally ethical about it. But yeah, there's always a conversation about, I think the Vatican is a great example of like the Vatican is protecting all of these art pieces from countries around the world. And yes, to be charitable, they did during some wars, but come on, guys.
Yeah, there's a lot of stealing going on. Same thing with the British Museum, right?
But for some reason, the Mona Lisa is associated with the Louvre, and it's been in Paris for so long that people are just kind of okay with that, Maybe if you talk to people from Florence, they're not okay with that, but I feel like that's not, I don't often hear the discourse of, the Mona Lisa shouldn't be in the Louvre,
That's true, but maybe we're not listening to the right people. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, the more one ages, the more you think of, the Indiana Jones line. It belongs in a museum. Yes. You're like, whose museum? The local culture? Well, no, I meant our museum, the Western people that steal the stuff.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, I was there and I saw it because you feel like you almost should, right? And of course, there's tons of people. So then it becomes the idea of seeing it in a crowd and it changes the nature of the thing. Well, personally, I do like sculpture often a bit more. So David, though, just blew me away. If I had to choose easily, I would choose Michelangelo's David. It's 18 feet tall.
Well,
it's
the scale
amazing.
Of it was not expected. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and it's right there. Right. Well, Mona Lisa is encased in glass, a little far away from you, right? By design, of course, it's going to be protected. And so it's just a very different experience where you can sort of spend a lot of time, taking in David. Well, Mona Lisa, it's just so cacophonous and busy.
I feel like, I'd still like to see the Mona Lisa in person one day, but to see a painting in person, okay, you can kind of look at it a bit and appreciate it, but you're not going to get close enough to see the detail. And if you really wanted to appreciate it, you could almost appreciate it more looking at a photo of it and spending a little more time examining it, you know, which is a little odd, but that's just the reality of, especially if you're far, as opposed to something like Michelangelo's David that is so big that even when you're not right next to it, you can appreciate the detail of it.
Yes. You're right. Some paintings you actually can get close and not so distracted by tons of people, but Mona Lisa is not that. So if you happen to have a good poster or a TV that shows the image, you can get the size approximately the same. Yeah. But with David, you're right. You cannot simulate an 18-foot thing very easily. No.
When they have replicas around Florence, but they're much smaller and whatever, right? So yeah, you can't. Well, yeah, I guess that's the other thing is it is easy to replicate a two-dimensional image of a painting. A photo will never perfectly approximate a statue or a building or a room or something like that, right? Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you to listeners joining us once again. I talked about effective giving, the importance of reducing suffering, and effective ways to do it. And Adam talked to us about his favorite work of art, the Mona Lisa, and how it's just blue skies all the way, baby. Until next time, think better to act better.
Peace out, cuboids.
For show notes or to discuss this episode, visit our Facebook page and website at trcpodcast.com. For general inquiries or to send a topic or parody suggestion, email info@trcpodcast.com. Help support the show by leaving a review on iTunes and liking us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at TRC_podcast.
Outtakes.
This is a great outtake.
It's a terrible outtake. It's a dog, you can't help it.
Well, you think there's no free will, Adam?
I think there's no free will for humans. Ask me if I think there's free will for dogs.
That's funny.
Well, because of quantum something in the dog's brain, the dog has free will, but the human doesn't. That doesn't make sense. You think there'll be like really artsy people that'll like think we're really basic?